We are living in uncertain times. Food prices keep climbing, supply chains have disruptions, and more people are realizing they need a backup plan. This video covers 11 crops that can keep you and your family fed even if you only have a small backyard, a balcony, or a few containers. Most people plant for fresh eating. These crops are different. These are high-calorie, long-storing crops that actually work when things get difficult. This video will show you how to grow them in limited space. At the end, you will see exactly which 5 crops to start with and how to avoid the mistake that makes most people quit by summer. Crop 1. Potatoes. Potatoes are the single most important survival crop you can grow. 100 square feet produces 40,000 calories. That is enough to feed one person for 20 days. No other vegetable comes close. Here is what kills most potato storage: early harvest. People get excited. They dig up their potatoes too soon, and by February, those potatoes have rotted in the basement. You are eating nothing but regret. Wait until the vines die back completely. That is when the skins have set. Plant survival varieties like Kennebec, Russet Burbank, Katahdin, not the fancy fingerlings, workhorses. Now here is the game changer for small spaces. You do not need ground. Grow them in garbage cans, old tires stacked up, grow bags on your balcony. People have grown 50 pounds of potatoes in a single container. One seed potato becomes 10 to 15 pounds. That's a 10-to-1 return on a patio. The Irish survived on potatoes for generations. 1 acre fed a family of 6 for a year. And potatoes are not just carbs: vitamin C, potassium, protein. This is survival food. Crop 2. Dry beans. Beans are your protein when meat is not on the table. They store for years. Some varieties stay viable for a decade. But here's the mistake. You are planting bush beans for fresh eating. Wrong beans. Bush beans give you a few pounds and you eat them in 2 weeks. Dry beans store for years and produce heavier yields. You need pole beans. Pole beans climb. They take up 1 square foot of ground but produce pounds going vertical. That's the secret. Stop thinking horizontal, start thinking vertical. 100 square feet produces 30,000 calories. But the real value? Protein. Beans plus grains equal complete protein. Romans, Aztecs, Chinese dynasties all survived on beans. Meat was luxury, beans were survival. And they fix nitrogen, free fertilizer while you grow food. Plant pinto, black, kidney beans. Let the pods dry until brown and brittle. Pull the plant, hang to dry, shell the beans. Store with oxygen absorbers. They will outlast your houseplants. They will outlast canned goods. Properly stored beans last a decade. Crop 3. Winter squash. Winter squash stores for 6 months without refrigeration, just sitting on your counter. Butternut, acorn, Hubbard. Here's something wild. The young, tender shoots at the tips of the vines are edible. They taste like cucumber. Most gardeners never touch them. That's food going to waste. A single plant produces 20 to 40 pounds, but squash wants to sprawl everywhere. Solution? Grow vertical. Trellis them up a fence, up a shed. They take up almost no ground space. You are training them like a dog, except the dog actually listens.
The storage secret? Curing. Leave them in the sun for 10 to 14 days after harvest. This hardens the skin. Then store cool and dry until spring. Historical fact: winter squash kept colonists alive through their first winters in North America. The colonists who listened to Native Americans survived. The ones who did not starved. Crop 5. Sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes produce 50,000 calories per 100 square feet in warm climates. That is more than regular potatoes. People think sweet potatoes only grow in the deep south. Wrong. Zone 7 and warmer. That is most of the US. They just need warm soil and 120 frost-free days. Small space solution? Large containers, raised beds, grow bags. Plant Beauregard. Disease-resistant, productive, stores well. Skip the specialty varieties with coffee shop names. You want yield, not Instagram likes. Cure them at 85 degrees for a week after harvest. This converts starches to sugars. Then store at 55 to 60 degrees. They last until spring and taste better over time, a crop that improves with age. The Okinawans ate 70% of their calories from sweet potatoes and became one of the longest-living groups in history. That tells you something. Crop 5. Amaranth. Most people think you need acres to grow grains. You do not. Amaranth produces serious calories in small spaces, and it's easier to process than wheat. Way easier. 4.5 million calories per acre. Wheat-level production. But wheat requires specialized equipment to thresh and mill. Amaranth? Pillowcase and a flat surface. Beat it, winnow it, done. It grows up, not out. Plants reach 4 to 6 feet tall with a tiny footprint. Tuck them into corners, along fences, in containers. Golden Giant produces up to a pound of seeds from one head. one head, and it doesn't need much nitrogen. Mediocre soil, you'll still get a harvest. Some varieties pop like tiny popcorn. You're growing a grain that doubles as a snack food. Pair it with beans for complete protein. This combination sustains civilizations for thousands of years. Crop 6. Beets. Beets give you 2 crops from one plant. The roots store for months. The greens? Harvest them multiple times before you pull the root. 2 harvests, 1 plant. They improve blood flow, enhance athletic performance, scientifically proven. Store for 4 to 6 months. Quick varieties in 50 days, or giant mammoth mango beets in 100 days. These are the best tasting beets you will ever grow. Sweet, dense, incredible. Yes, some are labeled as livestock feed. Ignore that. Perfect for containers. The greens are edible. Harvest baby greens for salads or cook them like chard, maximizing every inch. Plant in succession every 2 to 3 weeks. They tolerate cold. Leave them in the ground under mulch well into winter. Free food while everything else is frozen. Quick reminder, if you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. There are 5 more crops coming and the action plan at the end.
Sunflowers. Here is what blows people's minds about sunflowers. They are not decorative. Sunflowers are calorie-dense survival crops that give you nut-like nutrition in a single season. You're essentially growing a nut tree without waiting a decade. Sunflowers produce about 5 million calories per acre. The seeds are packed with protein, healthy fats, and calories. For small space growers, sunflowers grow up. They take up minimal ground space but produce massive amounts of food going vertical. You can grow sunflowers in containers, along fences, or tucked into corners. Harvest is simple. Cut off the head, let it dry, store the seeds. Done. They last for months when kept dry. Here's the comparison that matters. Nut trees like walnuts take 10 years before they produce. Hazelnuts take 2 to 3 years. Sunflowers, 1 season. Plant in spring, harvest in fall, eat nut-level calories and nutrition without the decade-long wait. That is time arbitrage in plant form. Plant after your last frost, full sun, tolerate poor soil. Space them 12 inches apart. Mammoth varieties produce the largest heads with the most seeds, and they're gorgeous. Your neighbors will think you're growing them for decoration. That's fine. You're growing them for survival. Cabbage. Here's something that will surprise you. Cabbage saved more lives during World War II than any other single crop. When German U-boats were sinking supply ships and Britain was starving, the government told people to plant one thing: cabbage. Not tomatoes, not lettuce, cabbage. Why? Cabbage stores fresh for 4 months and provides vitamin C through winter when scurvy becomes a real threat. Victory gardens were mostly cabbage because it produced the most food with the least input. It kept people alive. 100 square feet produces 200 pounds. That's enough for a family of 4 to have cabbage twice a week all winter. And cabbage ferments into sauerkraut, which stores indefinitely and prevents disease. You're growing medicine disguised as a vegetable. For small space growers, cabbage is efficient because each plant produces a dense head that stores for months. Grow them in containers or small raised beds. The storage varieties are late flat Dutch and Danish ballhead, dense heads that resist rot. Plant in late summer for hard fall. Cabbage tolerates frost. You can leave it in the ground until hard freezes hit. That extends your season by 2 months. Free food while everything else is dead and your neighbors are buying wilted lettuce at the store. Onions. Most people think onions are just for flavor. Wrong. Onions are antimicrobial. They store for 8 months and they're one of the easiest crops to grow. 100 square feet produces 200 pounds of onions. That's a lot of onions. Here's what gardeners get wrong. They plant sweet onions because they taste good raw. But sweet onions have high water content and rot in storage within weeks. You want storage onions with thick skins and low water content. Copra and Patterson. These are not sweet. They're pungent and strong, and they will last until late spring. For small space growers, onions are perfect because they take up almost no room. Tuck them anywhere, along edges of beds, between other crops, in containers. They're not picky.
They are the most agreeable plant in your garden. Plant onion sets in early spring. Space them 4 inches apart. They're ready when the tops fall over. Pull them, dry them in the sun for a week, hang them in mesh bags, done.
Here is a bonus most people do not know. Onion tops are edible. Cut them like chives all season for greens, and the bulb keeps growing underground. 2 harvests, 1 plant. During the Great Depression, people bartered onions for eggs, meat, and labor. Fresh vegetables had real value when money was scarce. They still do. Crop 10. Garlic. Here is something most people do not realize. Garlic was used as currency in ancient Egypt. Pyramid builders were paid in garlic rations because it kept them healthy enough to work in the desert heat. That is not folklore. That is documented history. Garlic was money. Garlic stores for 10 months and acts as a natural antibiotic. In survival situations, garlic prevents infection, preserves meat without refrigeration, and turns bland staples into food you actually want to eat. For small space growers, garlic is a no-brainer. It takes up almost no space. Plant individual cloves in fall, they overwinter, harvest in early summer. They're in the ground during a time when most crops are not growing anyway. Free real estate in your garden calendar. 1 clove becomes a whole bulb. Space them 6 inches apart. No pest issues, no disease, nearly impossible to kill. The varieties for storage are hardneck types like German Extra Hardy or Music. Large cloves store through winter. Here's what matters when modern medicine is not available. Garlic has antimicrobial compounds that fight bacterial infections. Studies show it is effective against staph, E. coli, and salmonella. You're not relying on folk medicine, you are using chemistry that works. And here is the preservation angle. Garlic's antimicrobial properties help preserve food. That's why it's in every traditional fermentation recipe. Sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, they all use garlic as part of the preservation system. It's not just flavoring, it's functional. Crop 11. Kale. Most people think fresh greens disappear in winter. They're wrong. Kale survives freezing temperatures and keeps producing when nothing else grows. Some varieties tolerate temperatures down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit and keep producing. Here's what's surprising. Kale tastes better after frost. Cold stress converts starches to sugars, reducing bitterness. The kale you're eating in January is sweeter than the kale from July. Winter kale is the glow-up nobody saw coming. For small space growers, kale takes up very little room, and 1 plant produces for months if you harvest outer leaves and let the center keep growing. Grow it in containers, raised beds, or tucked into corners. Winterborn and Lacinato are the cold hardy varieties. Plant in late summer, it matures before frost and keeps producing through winter. 100 square feet provides greens for a family all winter. Cut outer leaves, the plant keeps producing from the center. You're harvesting the same plants for months. Here's the vitamin angle that matters. Kale is packed with vitamins A, C, and K. In survival situations, when fresh food is scarce, vitamin deficiencies kill. Scurvy killed more sailors than storms did. Kale prevents that. It's not about taste, it's about staying healthy when your diet is mostly stored roots and dried beans. All right, remember at the beginning, the promise was to show you which 5 crops to start with and the mistake that makes most people quit. Here it is. The mistake is trying to grow all 11 crops at once. People get excited, plant everything, and by June, they're overwhelmed. By July, they've quit. Do not do that. Start with these 5 crops, and only these 5. Potatoes, beans, winter squash, sweet potatoes, and amaranth.
Why these 5? Because they cover your bases. Potatoes and sweet potatoes give you calories and carbs. Beans give you protein. Amaranth gives you grain. Squash gives you vitamins and healthy fats from the seeds. Together, these 5 crops provide complete nutrition and serious calories. Master these 5 first. Get them growing successfully. Get them stored properly. Then, next year, add 2 or 3 more from the list. The goal is not perfection. The goal is production. Even if you only grow potatoes and beans your first year, you've got carbs and protein covered. Everything else is a bonus. For small space growers, remember the key strategies. Think vertically with pole beans and trellised squash. Use containers for potatoes and beets. Do succession planting with crops like onions and garlic. And choose varieties that give you multiple harvests from one plant. Storage matters as much as growing. A root cellar is ideal, a cool, dark space that stays 40 to 50 degrees. But a basement corner, a buried cooler, or even a shaded outdoor pit works. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Canning and dehydrating extend storage further, but even without preservation, these 5 starter crops will give you 6 to 8 months of stored food with basic techniques. So there is your action plan. Start with 5 crops this year. Don't overwhelm yourself. Build real food security one season at a time. You don't need a farm. You just need to start. Ready for more? Subscribe. And if you want to know which 5 trees can turn a small yard into a food-producing system that feeds you for decades, check out the Backyard Food Forest video. Link is right here.